Good afternoon and welcome to this first conversation with Gallery Joy's artists for this first exhibit, Afro-centrism and American Kinship, a visual exploration. And I have to thank the artists, first of all, for allowing me this opportunity to test the idea of a gallery in my home with such amazing art and with such enthusiasm and perspective on this. And I know you'll enjoy hearing from them. Gallery Joy is a dream, is an idea that I've had for several years now. And I'm grateful that when I first broached it with my husband a few weeks ago, he said, okay, let's go for it. Let's test it. And yeah, I think some of you may know that I've spent most of my life working in the humanities and thinking about the ultimate question, which is what makes us human. And so one of the things that I've been curious about is what does the artist say when he or she creates their work? What are they telling us? But also, and I've from the artists that I've been talking to recently on this show, they're also generous enough to say, well, what do you see? And how does that conversation get developed? And so that's one of the things that we're going to explore in Gallery Joy during this exhibit. And hopefully, because of the reception has been quite complimentary in future exhibits. But the other important point, which I've been thinking about a lot during this time when we've had so much to deal with in terms of our health and politics and environment, is this whole question about how we figure out how to communicate with each other, how to engage with each other, how to understand each other, and frankly, how to be kind to each other. And for that, I turned again to Bobby, who has thought a lot about repairing breaches and exploring public kinship, and is at the point now where he has some very specific points of view. And so I wanted to spend a little time with these artists who themselves are so generous and so engaged in thinking about their work and thinking about the three questions we'll pose to them. And then just finally, I want to introduce my curator and my good friend and my fellow humanist, Louis Hicks, who just, you know, it was one of, I mean, I don't know how many people you can say in July, Louis, I don't want to wait on this anymore. I want to test this out. I want to think about it. And Louis says, okay, Joy, I'll start. I've got the, I've got friends, I've got knowledge, I've, worked as a curator, and I'll help you do this. And then does it so spectacularly. So Louis, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done. We've been friends for too many years to
is there something
count or to admit to, but thank you. And please, Louis, the curator of this exhibit.
Thank you, Joy, for those kind words. It's been a real pleasure working with Joy and the concept and all the artists. One of the questions that people will first ask is, why were they chosen? Well, many of them are my friends, and I followed their careers for several decades since I've been here in DC. And also we wanted to make sure that there was a budding artist so that we could pass the torch. So it's a good mixture of various styles, also various ways that they approach their art, the disciplines that they came from in entering art, as well as the subject matter that they represent. So I'd like to go alphabetically and give you a little bit of food. John Brown, our first artist, was born in Washington, D.C. and inspired nature. His images have been exhibited in museums and galleries all across the United States, as well as abroad. John received both his bachelor's and master's degree from Boston University. His postgraduate studies in fine art took place at the Corcoran College of Art and Design in Washington, D.C. Our next artist, Julee Dickerson-Thompson, was born in the 1950s in Brookland neighborhood of Washington, D.C. She studied communications, graphic, and publishing art at Simmons College. After graduation, Julee ran back to her home base in the infamous Chocolate City, where in the late 1970s took up residence at Zenith Gallery as an artist colony. Jourdan Hamilton is an Austin, Texas native. While growing up in the cultural center of Austin, he was exposed to various artistic styles and technology. He's one of the few electronic artists of our group, and he's an anime artist. He's a self-taught artist. He's currently working to found a Black-owned studio that will be primarily focused on 2D and 3D animation. The studio will produce Afro-punk inspired animation with messages of brotherhood, Black love, and fantasy. Our artist that we can't introduce you to today is Wayson Jones. And prior to our video, he was generous enough to record a video for us. So I'm going to hold him last, and then we'll switch to the video for his comments. Greg Scott is a celebrated artist who is also a painter, curator, and designer. He's currently an employee at Children's Hospital and runs the gallery there at the hospital. He's a native of Washington, D.C., and he began his journey as a professional artist at the Columbia College of Art Design in Columbus, Ohio. His work has been published and featured in several newspapers, magazines, books, and media. Joyce Wellman was born in New York City. She relocated to Washington, D.C. in 1981 to continue her artistic journey, which began with printmaking and painting. Her journey through art initially started in the early 70s at Robert Blackburn's printmaking workshop, at Kinshasa Redding's Color Point Atelier in New York's University, at Valerie Maynard's studio, at the Harlem Museum in New York City, and in the painting studios of friends and artists. Our last artist that we're going to feature is Wayson Jones. And Wayson Jones is a graduate of the University of Maryland. He began making visual art since he turned 50 at a late age in life. But he's been involved in the arts since he was a kid. He played music for grade school through college, where he also was in improv dance company for a couple of years. So the first question that we'll pose to Wayson will be posed through the video. So Nina, if you'll pull up our video, and we'll start with Wayson Jones. Nina, there's no sound. I think you might have to click the buttons in the bottom right corner, left corner for audio and video sharing. Wayson, thank you for joining us today. We're sorry that you're not able to join us on our live broadcast, but we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us about what your work embodies. So let's tackle that question. What does your work embody?
Okay, tackle is a good word because that's a challenging question, but I'll take it on. I think in general, my work embodies, whether it's toward the more figurative side, like the work on display at Gallery Joy, or the purely abstract side, like some of the works you can see in the background, actually, that my work always embodies a sense of presence, a sense of the presence of a metaphysical or spiritual energy that is projected out from the work. In the case of the series at Gallery Joy, the works are from the Black President series. And the persona in this case is obviously centered around former President Obama. You know, I had the thought that my work carries an idea of personification without identification, because I don't present work, figurative work, realistically. It's very abstracted. It's through titles and concept that the persona is really presented and explained. And these works are around my feelings about his ascendancy to the presidency and the reaction to that event that occurred within society, specifically the racist backlash to his election. Specifically, of the three pieces on display, In the Fires really carries that meaning because it sort of implies or presents the idea of burning an effigy in the image and in the title as one of the most extreme reactions, racist reactions to his presidency. Those pieces are probably among the most specific in terms of an idea of personification of my abstract portrait.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm going to pitch it back to Joy Ford Austin, the director of Gallery Joy, and allow her to continue with our program. Joy.
Thank you, Louis, and thanks to Wayson Jones for that really interesting observations about his work. I want to also say at this point that we have a really lovely audience for this first time Zoom discussion. So I want to let you guys know, this audience, that you will always be the first audience, and therefore historically the very best audience for Gallery Joy's opening. So thank you so much. I'm delighted, and people keep coming all the time. So it's really nice. Thank you for spending some time with us today. It's my pleasure to introduce my husband, Dr. Bobby Austin, as the moderator for the next section of this discussion. Bobby has been a university executive. He's been a foundation executive. He's been the head of a couple of think tanks. He's also now the executive director of Neighborhood Associates, but throughout all, and many other things, but throughout all of this, I think the true lines of who he is and how he thinks is this idea that he developed in the 1990s around repairing the breach. And this was an idea about, it was directed towards African-American men and boys initiatives at the Kellogg Foundation, and how the breach between those young men in particular and the rest of American society could be forged. And I must tell you that the late columnist, and I'm blanking on his name, William Raspberry declared the work that he did at that time, the context for setting America on the right path, except he said it better than I just did. But, and so now that work for repairing the breach, has evolved into a very practical approach for public kinship. And to be really, really clear, I think this show and any other shows that we do will embody the ideas that public kinship presents for us, and the opportunities it offers us to be better people, to be better Americans, and to figure out ways to live in community. And I'll say to you on a very personal note that I'm an immigrant. I'm from Guyana. I've lived in this country for more than 40 years. And one of the things that I think those of you who know me will agree is that I have a really large and compelling admiration for how African Americans who have been in this country for several generations have chosen to live their lives with a great deal of courage and a great deal of strength in pushing the idea of what democracy can be. And so with that admiration, I want to hand it over to Bobby because it means everything to the development of public kinship in the next years of this country's life. And it's critically important. So thank you.
Oh, but you can't really see me. That's great. I want to say first that it is nice to be with you and to see all these people on. And I want to say that I am now preparing a manuscript called Repairing the Breach Between Yourself and Your Lovely Wife, who has turned your comfortable and wonderful home into a public display of art, because I never thought it was going to grow to this. I did say yes, but I must tell you that I never thought that every Sunday I'm used to having my martini at a certain time and watching all my British comedies, and I have to go upstairs and lay down. So I'm rearranging my life here around this gallery joyful, gallery joy. But you know, it's for Joy to have remained with me for all these years. I owe her that, because I'm not the most easy, most comfortable person to be around. I see one of my children on, and I'm sure she would agree with that. But this is something that Joy is very passionate about, and so I'm passionate about it. I love art, I love artists, but I've been in another space, and I'm working on that, and I continue to work on that. I'm working on something called public kinship. And it is the reason I'm working on that. I'm not going to try to define it all for you today, because I don't think that that is necessary. I think that I look at your backgrounds, my God, you are world-class people. You have world-class ideas. The problem is we can't get your world-class ideas out to the world the way we should. And so one of the things that maybe the 2 or 3 things that could come out of this, maybe Joy has started something where people around the country in their homes will host artists and gallery openings in their homes and disturb their husbands and wives, no matter who they are, to get this word out, because we are very prone to be very upset. At least I am. You don't roam with the same group I do, and we're not particularly, I'm not particularly a rap aficionado. I might as well just admit that up front, and you can think about me any way you wish. It's okay, I'm 77, so I won't be here much longer. And say, you know, I'm a classicist in that sense, and, you know, I'm a Negro spiritual person, and that's who I am, and that's who I'll be when I die. I love Aaron Douglas. I love people like that. You know, I'm in that vein. But when I heard the young man, Jourdan, speak, and I looked at his background, I said, now this is the connection that we need. How do we bring you, not me, how do we bring you to the young people first in our own group, but it can't stay there? How do we bring you to our young people for discussion like this and other discussions? Because they can certainly discuss the work of, what's the first wonderful rap piece that came out, Melon Rhapsody? Somebody can put it in the chat room, Sashama, I think it's called, they're from Brooklyn, but anyway, the point was, what they did was to lay out a framework, and then other people exploded that framework. I think what Joy wants here is, how can these accomplished artists create the framework that will expand a real dialogue around values of art and not necessarily around values of I calling your mother by a particular name or all that kind of thing, nonsense, which I call it. I don't care what anybody else wants to call it. They can call it that. I call it nonsense. And even if it's realism, then maybe we need to bring fantasy back into the lives and the imaginations of young African-American children. I think it is important. And I think it is something that is missing. Without imagination, our people would still be in slavery. Paper means nothing when you're free. You have to imagine yourself and your people in a place. And art helps us to build that imagination. And that is what you do. And that is what I see. When I go to a museum, I'm looking to see not necessarily myself, but some of my thoughts about who I want to be or who I can see. So public kinship for me is this. It is first and foremost doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's pretty simple. It sounds very religious on a Sunday, but it can also be this: respecting others as you respect yourself, and teaching all people to do just that. If we had respect for one another, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now. Public kinship is what I am trying to create. I look at the science of it and I look at the spirituality of it. Scientists have certainly given us one fact that we can all work with today, and that is we are one human race. It springs out of Africa. Now, do with that as an artist what you will. How do you say that to the world? That we are one family, many branches, many trees, many whatever you want to call it. But I like the idea that symbolism, form, and sensibility that you create on canvas, which is not the same as what you would find in an African village, because they are living the culture and the art is what they live in. That's how they live. We do it in the European or the Western way, and that it is art for art's sake. But is there an intersection between that art for art's sake and public kinship? I think that there is, because it can be if not a teaching tool, a learning tool for young people and for all African Americans. It gives us something to talk about that is relevant, that is value-free, in the sense that the values that you express are humanistic. And as Joyce says, the values that you express are democratic. That is what is going to set, I think, this movement that she is trying to get started with art as a new way of looking at it. Art that expresses how African Americans see democracy and how we changed democracy. That is the key. We did change what democracy meant. Now, no one has to go on television and tell us we did it. We know we did that. So we need to talk about that. How did we change American democracy? Well, we opened it up for everybody to be a part of it, even some of those who don't treat us right after they get it. That's okay. We also learn to forgive and forget, but never forget that the redefining democracy in the world started with African Americans. Frederick Douglass, right on through our through line, our motherhood, our fatherhood follows that we are a people of the earth, but we are a people of a democratic voice, a moral voice in America. Now, I'm not going to talk about that because I think we're losing a bit of that, but that is what brought us to the 60s and the power that we had, the moral voice of King. But King didn't stand by himself. You know that. You're all highly educated. King stood on those moral voices that started in slavery and out of slavery, and sung and painted and talked until those symbols meant something to everybody. The Negro spiritual is public kinship at its highest form. Everybody can sing it, everybody can do it. It speaks to people around the world. I have traveled a lot, and I am always I was amazed and also hurt at one point in my life. I was in Germany, and these people were so happy to have me, and they had their little daughter come out, and she sang the verses of a Negro spiritual in a German accent. It was beautiful. So I came back, and I was working in Cabrini Green then, and I thought, well, I'm a, you know, and so I said to the child, would you sing me? Didn't know what a Negro spiritual was. Well, that hurt me, because that meant we had failed, the parents failed, we all failed to pass these things along. But what the artists can do, if there is an artist movement for public kinship in America, you could help through the work of Joy and Louis and others to recenter us with something that is powerful. And if you look on the walls here in the house, everybody isn't painting the same thing. Everybody isn't saying the same thing. There's this lovely piece by Julee Dickerson. I love all of them, but it is just, it belongs in my house. So she's gonna have to leave it. And I'm sorry, it's just people who come in, they don't even think it's for sale. They think, oh, what a beautiful piece you have. And I say, yes, it is. Isn't it lovely? But it says everything to me. It won't say everything to everyone. And I hope she will talk about that when we get ready to talk. I'm going to quit now because I wanted to proselytize a little bit more than saying what public kinship is what we do. It is what I do. It is not what anybody else does. It's what Joyce does. It's what Greg does and John and everybody. It's what you do to create a space for relatedness. And I believe that art, your art, is where we could work with our young people. I'm so afraid of dying and our young people not being in a space. I know they're doing well. Many of them are doing so well. But I mean, we have been a group of people that I have a good friend, and he used to tell me, he was a white guy, he said, why do you worry about everybody? I said, I guess we can't help it. That's who we are. We want every child to do well. We don't want 1%, 5%. Of course, we have brilliant people, and we have people at Harvard and Yale and Fisk and Morehouse. We have brilliant people. But then we have those who are left behind, and that's what we must work on. And I think that's where public kinship has its greatest value, with whites and with blacks. Because believe me, there are whites who have been left behind. And we must be big enough and moral enough, as King would say, to take the world house, these are his, and make it ours. And I think artists can do that. I'm going to quit, and now I'm going to ask questions, and there are 3 questions that you have, and that is, what does your work embody? That's first. And second, I've described public kinship in a way, and do you see a relationship between the 2 ideas, doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you, and self-introspection, because that's what public kinship is? And how can we as Americans, what is the role of African-American artists in engaging and exchanging these ideas of democracy and creating a kind of country, kind of nation in America? We're going to start with John Brown, and then from John, we'll go to Julie. From Julie, I'll call your names again. We'll go to Jourdan, and from Jourdan to Greg, and from Greg to Joyce. So John, could you start us off? Let's see, John, where's John? Oh, there he is. John, I think you're still on mute.
Looks like his pictures. There you are, John.
There he is.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for your thank you so much for your comments, Bobby. Hello.
Yeah, you're here.
Thank you so much for your comments. Okay, so I think you can see and hear me now. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes.
Great. Well, first, Bobby, thank you so much for your insightful comments. I also want to express my appreciation both to Joy and Louis for your leadership in including my work. And let me try to dive right in answering some of your questions. And if I don't answer them all, please let me know, and I'll try my best to cover those areas that are missing. But in terms of my work, I think of my work as focusing on the beauty of nature. And I want to look at all aspects of nature and encourage viewers to explore nature through my eyes. But I also recognize that people bring their experiences when they see my work. And I'm very interested in hearing their reactions. But in general, I am hoping that people will have different types of sensations, that perhaps they will be enchanted by some images. They may find other images tranquil. Sometimes there may be revelations in what they're experiencing. And I try to encourage people to slow down, to pause, to look at the work, which has just been taken in very random places around the world. But hopefully these images collectively will evoke a sense of beauty that people can relate to. And as an African American, I hope that people recognize that, oh, African Americans appreciate beauty in many forms, including nature. But I also believe that other cultures also can relate to nature in different ways, and they too can appreciate beauty. In terms of engaging dialogues, I think that kinship is very important. I want to commend the group that has organized this exhibition, because even today, by using technology, hopefully we are reaching younger generations who like to use videography and the internet and other technologies in order to communicate. So hopefully by us gathering today and sharing our thoughts, we are hopefully reaching younger audiences and younger generations, and hopefully we will include them in the dialogue as time goes on. I also want to mention that I've been fortunate enough to participate in Art in Embassies programs, and that is through the US State Department. And my work has been featured abroad, particularly in Africa, I'm pleased to say. And so not only are citizens, US citizens who work in the embassies engaging with my work, but visitors to those embassies in the respective countries are also exposed to my work. And hopefully by having my work in the embassies, conversations and dialogues are occurring, even if I'm not present physically, my work is. And hopefully that work is inspiring people to think about nature in novel ways. So I will stop there and pass the baton on to the next artist, unless you have more questions for me.
I just want to pick up one thing that you're saying, and that is what a wonderful idea for us to consider as a collective. Sometimes when I get a lot of people together, I don't let them leave me. So they may have to stay for a year or two as we discuss this, because what a way to show your work. What a way to create the dialogue in other countries about who we are and our varied understandings of life. Your work is, of course, extraordinary, and anyone can be related and is related to the beauty of nature and the environment, and therefore causing all of us to talk about something other than the most mundane of things. We have got to move on to a different conversation, a different dialogue, and we've got to produce the narrative. If you, John Brown, Julee Dickerson, and the rest of you, if you don't produce that dialogue, we won't have it. You have to produce the narrative so we can have the dialogue. And I will go now to Ms. Dickerson-Thompson so she can tell us more about her work.
Thank you. I think I'm going to try and answer all three questions in one answer, if that's okay.
That's fine.
In the interest of time. I took so many wonderful notes, and I want to thank you very much, not just for this uplifting exhibit, but the conversation, which I think is so important and so powerful. Just to talk a little bit about my work, I would say that, especially based on some of the things you said, Aaron Douglas is certainly an inspiration for me and a strong influence, as many other artists are. I see my work as embodying spirituality a great deal of the time. You'll see Adinkra symbols. You will also see an organic sense of improvisation going on. You will see a soapbox. This series right here is the RX for 45 as we were going through that period. The RX that I found to get me through was resist, first of all, then to assist, second of all, and then to exist, which is about being able to take the life and all the struggles and all the challenges that we're facing and turn them into something positive and still enjoy the time that we're in. Then the ancestral spirits, there is a piece in there, a sculpture that I'm very proud of, and it speaks to nature as John did earlier, but it also speaks to ancestral, to the intergenerational. I think that we came up in a generation gap and turned that into intergenerational experiences. So this piece here, back to the fields, ironically, there's a celebration of new birth in the egg. And then there's the tree, which is symbolic of our ancestry, our roots, our future. That piece was actually created by my mother, and I'm sure that she worked with my father to create the base, and then the doll, the figure, and all of that were pieces that I brought together, including an African sculpture base. So there's a lot going on inside the work, but I think it's not until we get to the conversations that we're able to enjoy, explore, and use the experience to grow. It was recently a show that was Blackburn Gallery, Joyce. I finally got to see where your roots were. And someone came and explained to me the question I had about my work. I had used this paper, and she explained that it was formulas, problems, and solutions. And I said, thank you. So thank you for the conversations, and let's see how powerful, a lot of the people in the younger generation don't understand, but I'm old enough now to say we do make a difference. We have made a difference, and we can continue to make a difference through our lives and our art. So that's my story.
Well, thank you, Julie. Not only, difference that you and others have made the difference for us in this country. I want to just pick up on one thing, and this is what art is all about. When I saw the egg, I said, oh, this is fantastic. This is the universal sign and symbol of birth. And it's everywhere, every culture. So you plunk this down in Beijing, they will know exactly what you're talking about. And you may explain other pieces of it, but they know. You take it to Russia, Mother Russia, they know what the red egg is all about. I've written a piece 30 years ago, didn't get published, but I still talk about it, called The Crystal Dream Pool, and it's about rebirth of the human spirit, and that's the egg. So, and that is what I call public kinship, because, but the key here is what Joy and Louis have to do. They can't be lazy. They're going to have to work with you and create the written narrative to go with this. as you're moving around in conversations. You got to have a study guide. I'm an old teacher too. You got to have a study guide. You can't just say anything and do anything. You got to put something on paper. It's got to be correct. And you got to help people see, aha, that is what that is. Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate that. Let's go to Jourdan. Where is he? There he is, with the world behind him. Now, see, I love it. Young people know the signs and symbols. Okay.
All right. I will go with what does my work embody? Honestly, with a lot of my work, I like to put in a lot of fun, a lot of imagination, and just a little bit of like out of the box thinking, so I can have different concepts to what you see every day in the media. So I work to cultivate that kind of difference, and then I bring it through in my artwork. Between public kinship and how I feel, I do feel like, as a Black man growing up as I have these lessons that have just been ingrained and, they're written all upon me. And if I'm able to give that to younger people to help them out and say, hey, this is something to look out for, while I'm also making a story that they can watch and not even realize, oh, I'm getting a message here, my job is done. So currently I write stories. I like to have a little action in all my stuff. And I like to just put these messages in the background. So if you want to read into it, you can learn something. If not, come and enjoy the visuals.
Well, Jourdan, thank you so much. This is the powerful intersection between all of your work and this generation. I think it is called anime, which my wife is the one who told me what it was. It looked like a beautiful cartoon to me. But my son, who is a true jock, unlike me, he's a dentist. He came in because Joy has been ill, as you know, and I've never known him to want to buy a piece of art. And they are people who they can afford to buy art. Well, he bought one of those because it spoke to him. And what I'm saying, Jourdan, is you are onto something that we're all going to have to be onto in our own way, not doing anime, but doing doing all the things that we do. But it's got to be in a package that we can send to people. They can see it. Young people are going to love what you have done. The Japanese would learn a lesson. You can teach them in their really unknowing, I won't call it racism. It's just chauvinism. That's how their culture is. It's not to be disdained. It is to be worked with. They simply see all people in the way that they sometimes see us. But what you have done is taken their work and you have created a narrative to create conversation between, let's say, the Japanese and our young people, which I think could be amazing for what and I just commend you for that. I commend everybody, but I think this is like a cutting edge piece that you are starting, and I'm glad that I'm here to see it because I think that is truly public kinship in the international order. I thank you so very, very much. Greg Scott, who has a smile like me. I smile like my father. People always say, when I was young, they would say, gosh, you grin a lot. And I said, I would say I do. And grinning, not knowing I was grinning at the time. But thank you, Greg. And so we'll go to you.
Okay, thank everybody for joining us today. And I just want to thank Joy and Louis for putting this on and just all the artists that contribute their artwork to the exhibit. It's an honor and a pleasure and a blessing at the same time. This is my first show for doing COVID. This is my first show. So I was very happy when Louis called me and asked me, yes. He couldn't even get it out of his mouth before I said yes. So yeah, but my images are very strong. I came through, I love the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s images. I came through advertising. I graduated from Pratt Institute. I lived in New York City for 10 years, lived in LA for 2 years. I had an opportunity and chance to work with top celebrities during that time. And I also worked with Andy Warhol. I dealt with Keith Haring. I came through all of that. That's not on my resume, so I don't put everything down. But I had a chance to work with with Quincy Jones and people like that. So they were very influenced on my life. And so in saying that, my images, I always want my images to be strong enough to capture everybody's attention. And I always wanted like my images to be like a movie. And wherever you looked at, that image is moving without it being moved. So that intrigued me on that level. And so in doing that, I found out at a young age, people were drawn to my images or drawn to the way I draw pictures and try to understand how my concept. And then I started getting into, okay, let me take the imagination over here. Let me take the imagination over here. Let me get them to think on this level. Let me get them to think on this level. Let me play with the eye over here. And I love colors. So colors is just my thing. And I love the way colors just change people's energy when they see the artwork. So, you know, things like that just encourage me. Now, I also had an opportunity. I've come full circle in my life. So and I like circles. I also had an opportunity to be the curator at Children's Hospital for the last 15 years. And you talk about kinship and bringing people together through diversity, and just people love to see the artwork in the hospital. And when I found that out, I was in heaven. That's all I'm gonna say. So I've had the opportunity to work with many artists from many backgrounds, and just to see, when I see a child walk down the hallway and can't talk about a piece of artwork with his mother, or his father talk about a piece of artwork or photograph, how that photograph moves them when they stop and look at the artwork, those type of things I'm just inspired by. So anytime I meet I love being in the arts. So anytime I'm being with an artist, whether it's anime, whether it's sculpture, whether it's abstract, whether it's fabric art, that just incorporates my life. I'm in my world at that point. So that, and I come from a background of jazz. So my parents was really into jazz. My uncles and them was into jazz. So I've tried to incorporate all of that in my artwork when I create something. And what's the next question?
I think you've answered all of them, as a matter of fact. And get wrapped into one. Yeah, the role of the African-American artist in exchanging ideas. I think if you can work with young people in a hospital, that's perfect. Yes, you were going to say something, though.
Now, I think this is a wonderful, I just came up with the idea. I get these ideas. I think this is a wonderful platform. And I think, George, Louis, if you guys, I think it'd be good to introduce this to the school systems as a virtual gallery exhibit conversation for students. That's the way I think you can hit the younger people and get them to do like maybe a little gallery show at their school and get them to talk about their artwork as well as talk about the artwork at the Gallery of Joy. Perfect. I like that. Give Joy and Louis something to do other than to just take over my house and destroy my ability to have. But anyway, Joyce. Now I know Joyce well. So Joyce Wellman, I know Joyce Wellman extremely well. I didn't know the rest of you. Sorry. I love you now. I know you. I knew Julie by reputation, of course, but I am delighted to see her. And so we'll go to Joyce now. You're on mute, Joyce. You're missing your wonderful voice. Unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right, thank you, Bob. It's good to talk with you too. And you know, I when I first saw the title of the show, I to be honest with everybody, I was saying, well, I don't know if I understand that, but that's why I was so happy to know that you were going to be talking about this. And the idea that art can be an intersection with the humanities. And, you know, like everybody who talks about art doesn't have to be an art historian or anything like that. But the idea that how does our art function, and can it function in this kinship? And what I really love what you had to say, you're the second person who I know who talks like this, that there's one race, it's called the human race.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the first steps to get us to build this kinship. And the idea that Afro-centrism and thinking about our creating collective, we wouldn't be just creating it for us, because you said that also there has to be this connection. It has to be for everybody. Because sometimes I wonder, okay, so what's going on in our country? Why are some people so angry and everything? And sometimes I said, well, this is what I came up with today. Oh, when you look at African Americans, we embody so much of America. When people think about coming to America, they think about us. When they think about the culture, they think about us. So we have so much to celebrate. Even the people who are treated horribly, killed and murdered on the street, we found a way to celebrate that and have the whole world do it. And the proof of it is when George Floyd was killed. Now, the thing that blew my mind, after everything else is said and done, that nobody had to send out a call for action. The whole world stood up and acted because it was something that happens to people all over the world who are minimized and so on and so forth. So, you know, I think it's wonderful to be talking about the possibility of communicating. Now, my work is like totally abstract. Okay, not all the time. Sometimes I have something I want to say directly, but then mostly it's abstract. You're going to see bright colors. You're going to see numbers. Like here, this one is called from head to hand. That's how we live as human beings. We go from our heads to our hands. And if we take up the idea that we can bring this idea of collectivity and kinship to America, because this is what we've been talking about all this time. Can one artwork do it? Who knows? But the idea for me, my stuff kind of comes like this. I like numbers. And, you know, the idea that we're one is a real good one because, you know, we got 46 chromosomes. You add them up, that's 10, that's 1 and 0, that's 1, we are 1. This piece is my other thing I love to print. It's called freestyling. That's how I work. I just kind of let it go. And this is etched on a plate. And I said, wow, that looks like a cool dude. So I think I'll call it freestyling. And freestyling also represents how I try to work at times where I'm just going to get started. Usually I'm doing a lot of colorful things. And this latest set of works is, you know, black on red, black on blue. How are you going to do that? How are you going to see through? My work usually is like this. There's numbers, there's hands, this about storytelling. My mother played the numbers when I was a little kid in Brooklyn, and that is the kind of thing that is constantly my memory, is my memory board, and it's the way I can talk about this thing. And so now we're from the digital 10, 0 to 9 to the binary, zeros and ones. So we think that that's the new thing, but it really isn't. It's been since the very beginning of time. But also brotherhood also could be talked about that way. Some of the names of my works, that's where I kind of come to. There's a one piece that's in the gallery right now. It's a triptych. It's called Easy Hubris. I see you. I am Nemesis. I am. And the third panel is Sociopath with a great big exclamation point. And that was inspired by Donald Trump himself. I looked at what was going on, all the hubris that he does, whatever it is he does, but Greek mythology. So let's talk about international. Let's talk about, you know, the Chinese are, in my mind, the Japanese, they have given a great big influence to everybody around the world with this anime. So we can say they're badasses. Okay, come on, let's do it. And like I said, with African Americans, we are the sort of like signpost. We are this thing that happens in America that everybody notices. And we're people who have their due coming, and perhaps it'll happen through the arts. So like when I get started working, I mean, I have a couple of things in mind, colors and da-da-da-da. I don't necessarily have messages until I read something like Say It Plain. And I know, Bobby, you know about that book. Yeah. And there's so many inspiring words in here, and of people who have come before us, and they've been on the march to do it. We're gonna do it too. I mean, when I first got here, it was abstraction. As they said, well, if you put a kente cloth in here, I can sell it. I guess I can't, you can't sell my work. That's okay with me. But, you know, every artist comes to the table with some different kind of way. My thing, let me put a picture of, if our emotions are possible, you know, we know how to count and send somebody to Mars, but if we ask, how come you did so and so, many times people say, I don't know, because they're not in touch with the inner spirit. And that's, I think, what you're talking about. And I think art can get us in connection with that. And, you know, like you, I love Julie's piece because there was something so special about it. And I actually thought it was one of the things that you and Joy had already collected of the many beautiful objects that you have in your home. And I didn't get a chance to tell you that, Julie, but I think it's just out of sight.
Well, thank you, Joyce. As always, Joyce always hits it right where it should be. She has that way. She has that Brooklyn knack of talking. I mean, we Southerners are slow. It takes us a long time to get all the words and sentences together. And she just rattles it off. Guys, thank you so much. I was only kidding. I'm so glad to have you in my home and Joy's home, of course. And I think what she has done and with Louis is create something new. Isn't that wonderful? Something that we can comfortably do. You don't have to have a boxy museum, a gallery to show art and interest people in good ideas, good works, and standing for something, as Joyce just said, when the whole world stood for us and stood for themselves for democracy and fair play. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Joy, and I think they're going to now begin to ask questions from the.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you very much. I guess I had a low-grade worry that we wouldn't hit the mark here. And of course, because I'm a warrior by nature, but that has all dissolved. And you all have answered these questions and stretched our imaginations, both in your work and in how to interpret democracy, how to interpret public kinship, and how to engage with each other as artists and engage with each other as audience. And so what I wanted to do in the few minutes, I know we've gone over a few minutes, maybe just for 5 minutes, if there are any questions, any observations from the audience, would you unmute and ask or give us a sense of what you're thinking?
Hi. Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Audra Burrows, and I was just wanted to comment on Joyce Wellman's pieces. I was fascinated by many of the ones that you showed. And there was one in particular, it was very horizontal, and I just was wondering what medium did you use for it? It had a lot of yellows and reds in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was called On the Canal. And it was inspired by a show that I was in where we were talking about the New York State canal that runs from New York State to Ohio back in the old days. And one of the things about that canal show was that the canal boats have their flat boat, and then they have like a little house in between where people are. And one of the things that they were positing whether or not that was one of the routes on the Underground Railroad as well. And so there was a book that I had read, and so it was going to go to it was going to be all about canal boats and the canal. But anyway, so you did ask me, I do this, that's acrylic on canvas, and it's also I like to do a little bit of mixed media kind of thing. So there's some, oil paint stick, or everybody knows something that you have a stick that makes color is a crayon, but artists use ones too that are like that. And so that's what it was. And charcoal, like when I'm working, I'll start with like from head to hand. That drawing, quote unquote, started with the spiral. So the spiral went around and around and around and up and down and and ended up in that hand. So that was one line that I did it because my inspiration will happen like in sort of like in that kind of way. It just boom. Mm-hmm. Comes out like this thing here, so it went around in the spiral, up and down, zigzag, all the way around, over the shoulder, another little thing, and then my hand, I put it there because hands are kind of thing that in art, a lot of artists do it all over the world. The hand has such a powerful meaning. It actually, is actually the mandala as well. So it represents the spiritual in art. It's, we get hunches, we get, handy ideas, but that's what I did with that. And it's a square, so on purpose, because the work that I do will be some sort of geometry somewhere in it, either the thing itself or inside there. And the spiral is so important. So we go around and around and around and around, and it's part of nature. And it's sort of like the thing that you find it all over nature. It's in us.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other questions, observations before we bring this to an end, this extraordinary session, in my opinion? Any other questions,
I was going
observations?
to add, I was just going to add, one of our viewers, P.S. Perkins, had a suggestion. So P.S., if you are ready.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, and I haven't thought that. First of all, thank you to all of the artists. This is incredible. I remarked to Louis and said, I need a gallery. It's like I want everybody's work. I do photography a little bit, and the first gentleman that showed his photography was so incredibly beautiful, and I could see how young people could very much relate to the anime work of Hamilton, just everybody's work. I want, when I grow up, I want a piece of everybody's work. But what I was saying is my work is in communication, and I am a master storyteller and poet and writer. But one of the things that I work with in my own work is what I call language legacy. And I am spending a lot of time trying to help individuals, families, communities renew their commitment to communicating in a way that uplifts us all, as your art is trying to do. We need to change the language. We need to reframe the language. And we know that we have adopted and adapted to a language of our oppressors in that oppressive time. Right. That language was never meant to do anything but what it does. It wasn't supposed to. So through your art, you have been trying to transcend all of that. And so my job is literally looking at words and dealing with them and talking about how we need to be transformed by renewing the communication processes. So with that said, I was mentioning to Louis Hicks that, what we can do is, as a member of the humanities and supporting artists, visual artists and all other kind, is bring the young people together into the spaces in small groups at a time, and just let them tell the stories that they see in the work. We just have like a little round, fire group kind of thing. And you tell, what do you see? And someone that has the ability can prompt or can help, but mainly it's just about, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? And how is this speaking to you? Let's tell a story together. And it can even go into an artist workshop or any other things, but that was just something that was coming to me about, how can we get them involved with this in a manner that allows them to have voice and be able to say to them, what do you see?
Thank you
to
so
us what
much.
they see. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Perkins, who helped us when we were doing Humanities DC programming, and very fine Humanities DC programming.
Yes, thank you.
Think of these suggestions.
Joyce, Joy, I just wanted to respond to that, to say that, yeah, I think that's a great idea. One of the ways that kids like to be able to do things is to tell them the story and then let them illustrate it. All you have to do is give kids the materials, whether it's the idea and whatever, they can do the rest. You don't have to teach them anything. They know how to draw. They know how to use art materials. Kids really, 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 really do. They don't have all the other stuff preventing it. So, and they enjoy it. So that's one thing. I think the spoken word is very extremely important in deciding on what you're going to be doing as an image.
Thank you, Joyce. And another comment, and then John?
John Brown. If I could just add a comment, the process that was described by Dr. Perkins reminded me of what it was like to be an art student and going through the critique, which is a process that art students must go through with each of their classes. And it is when an artist would say, they would put their work up, display it at the front of the room. They would have about 3 to 5 minutes to describe what it is that they're trying to accomplish with that series of work. But then they must sit down, and each person, all the other fellow classmates, have the opportunity to tell the artist what they see in the work. And this is an exercise that most trained artists must go through in art school. And I think taking that concept and moving it into a classroom for young people or in a study room or some other gathering place and giving young people the opportunity, each one, to say what it is they see in the artwork would be a great process. And it's something that's not unusual. Artists are trained to go through that process routinely.
Thank you very much. So Louis and I are taking notes from people who come to the gallery on Saturdays, as well as the conversations that have happened today, as we think about what happens next for Gallery Joy. And, you know, I'm getting closer and closer to the opinion that there is a life for Gallery Joy after this exhibit. And I appreciate and thank you guys for that. This audience has been remarkable. I don't think we've lost anyone over this hour and 10 minutes. So I don't want to stress their patience too much. Again, thanks for the participants. Thanks to Louis. Thanks to Bobby. Thanks, of course, to the artists who come so prepared and so creative and so inspirational. And most of all, in these moments, thanks to Nina, who managed the whole Zoom. And please give her a clap, because, you know, no amount of preparation works once you get into the space and there's not somebody competent to help you. So Nina, thank you very much for always being there. We've got some nice comments in the chat room, and we'll pay attention to those as well. I really appreciate all that you have given us. We have 2 more Saturdays in October, on the 23rd and the 30th, from 2 to 4 p.m. And so if there's someone who we don't have your email, if you can put it quickly in the chat room so that I can send you a message about that. And again, for me, this has been so inspiring, beyond my expectations. And I'm very, very grateful for audience. I'm grateful for artists. And you'll hear from us again soon. Appreciate it very much.